could fail.
Never did in anybody's thought process about how to protect America did we ever think that the evildoers would fly not one, but 4 commercial aircraft into precious U.S. targets. Never.
I don't think anybody could have predicted that these people would take an airplane and slam it into the World Trade Center, take another one and slam it into the Pentagon.
Nobody in our government, at least, and I don't think the prior government could envision flying airplanes into buildings on such a massive scale.
But that turns out not to be true. U.S. military plans did envision and practice those very scenarios.
In fact, multiple war games were underway on 9/11 itself.
The question was, we had 4 war games going on September 11th.
Important questions and has many inaccuracies. Senator Mark Dayton of Minnesota officially complained.
And the commission testimony 20 months later covered up those truths. They lied to the American people, they lied to Congress, and they lied to your 9/11 Commission.
Senator Dayton gave a few examples of the lies that NORAD told the official inquiry.
NORAD issued an official chronology which stated that the FAA notified NORAD of the second hijacking at 8:43. Wrong. The FAA notified NORAD of the third hijacking at 9:24, according to your report. Wrong. FAA notified NORAD of the 4th hijacking at an unspecified time, and that prior to the crash in Pennsylvania, Langley F-16 combat air patrol planes were in place, remaining in place to protect Washington, D.C. All untrue.
He pointed out that the Commission's report actually admits that NORAD lied.
It definitely did not look like a commercial plane. I didn't see any windows on the side. Big gray plane. It definitely did not look like
steel, bolts, and rivets. How could the Twin Towers fall straight down when the damage and resulting fires were only to one corner, 2 sides? Only the tops of the Twin Towers should have fallen, and they should have fallen over, not straight down. In fact, the top of one tower did fall over onto Building 4, so there was no building weight to crush the floors below. So what caused the collapse of those floors? Pulverized and ejected at high speed, since the force to do that is greater than the force needed to shear the weakened steel, bolts, and rivets. How could the Twin Towers fall straight down when the damage and resulting fires were only to one corner, 2 sides? Only the tops of the Twin Towers should have fallen, and they should have fallen over, not straight down. Nor did they creak or groan at any time. Firefighters said they seemed sound and reported that there were no fires they couldn't control. How could the building collapse at the maximum speed of gravity? Each floor hit should have slowed the fall. Just as if you drop a steel ball from the roof, it would fall faster without resistance. This couldn't have happened without explosives placed inside the structure. How could the concrete encased in a steel frame pan with 2 layers of carpet over it, riveted inside columns of steel beams, welded together in a network with steel bands, be pulverized? How could steel beams and clouds of finely pulverized concrete come shooting out of the buildings at hundreds of miles an hour, traveling all the way to New Jersey? This is only possible with explosives.
And how operatives were directed to carry them out. He told us the operatives had been instructed to ensure that the explosives went off at a point that was high enough to prevent people trapped above from escaping.
How could a hijacker find and hit the Pentagon, whose flight instructor said, "I'm still to this day..."
The airplane coming in to the Pentagon, there was a young man who would come in and say to the Vice President, the plane is 50 miles out. The plane is 30 miles out. And when it got down to the plane is 10 miles out, the young man also said to the Vice President, do the orders still stand? And the vice president turned and whipped his neck around and said, of course the orders still stand. Have you heard anything to the contrary?
In front of the Pentagon that night, seeing one of our fortresses pried open by a missile airplane.
There and slammed right into the Pentagon. Huge explosion, great ball of fire.
The plane does not fit in that hole.
Attacked the United States in New York, shot down the plane over Pennsylvania.
On fire, some small fires in the woods, just small brush fires. The ground smoking, debris everywhere, pieces of metal, paper, insulation, wiring, and I just looked around and no people, and I'm thinking.
I'm going to describe the design of planned attacks on buildings inside the U.S.
9/11 Commission ignored the following significant facts and questions that conflict with that report's conclusions. Why did a third skyscraper at the World Trade Center that was not hit inexplicably collapse? Building 7 at the World Trade Center was never hit by an airplane and had no significant fire. It was 47 stories high. It was constructed of steel. Yet at 5:30 p.m., it fell perfectly straight down into a small pile of rubble, just like a controlled
Now, more on the latest building collapse in New York. You might have heard a few moments ago I was talking about the Salomon Brothers building collapsing. And indeed it has. Apparently that's only a few hundred yards away from where the World Trade Center towers were. And it seems that this was not a result of a new attack. It was because the building had been weakened during this morning's attacks. We'll probably find out more now about that from our correspondent, Jane Stanley.
And how they caused the building to collapse remain unknown. Larry Silverstein, the leaseholder of Building 7, who collected insurance of $7 billion, is on tape saying he ordered the New York Fire Department to pull it, to destroy the building with explosives. In our
terrible loss of life. The smartest thing to do is pull it. And they made that decision to pull, and we watched the building collapse.
Turned into triage centers for emergency treatment.
I said, we've had this terrible loss of life. The smartest thing to do is pull it. And they made that decision to pull, and we watched the building collapse.
Why did the Federal Emergency Management Agency lament that the specifics of the fires in World Trade Center 7
turned into triage centers for emergency treatment? As you can see behind the Trade Center appears to be still burning. We see these huge clouds of smoke and ash, and we know that behind that there's an empty piece of what was turned into triage centers for emergency treatment.
I said, we've had this terrible loss of life. Maybe the smartest thing to do is pull it. And they made that decision to pull, and we watched the building collapse.
About the Salomon Brothers building and its collapse.
Well, only really what you already know. Details are very, very sketchy. There's almost a sense downtown in New York behind me, down by the World Trade, the two twin towers of the World Trade Center. As you can see, behind the Trade Center appears to be still burning. We see these huge clouds of smoke and ash, and we know that behind that there's an empty piece of what was a very familiar New York skyline, a symbol of the financial prosperity of this city, but completely...
Theodore Roosevelt warned us to announce that there must be no criticism of the President or that we are to stand by the President, right or wrong, is not only unpatriotic and servile, it is morally treasonable to the American public.